Afternoon, everyone. Great to catch up. We're just about to go through sprint 8 of 14 on our local digital fund, our TaskSmart Canvas app. I'm just about to share my screen. We've got a bit of a presentation we'll run through today. It's good to have you on the call. We'll go through who's on it later, but we've got representation from Colchester and Tendring, which is really good. So we'll start going through the slides. As we said, it's 8 out of 14. So we're heading towards the last few weeks. We're looking at the first week in July, which is going to be the release of our TaskSmart app. So we're running through what will be the second round of testing. So it's good to catch up at this stage. What are we going through today? Well, it looks interesting. There's a lot there, but we'll kind of run through it together. We're going to have a bit of a background to application funding, how we've got to where we are now effectively. So that'll be for others that may be watching this that haven't been part of it. Why do we choose Microsoft Canvas apps? That's always a good question. I think it will become apparent, but it's good to kind of go over that. Keeping licensing costs down. That is not easy, especially when you're dealing with Microsoft and the package solutions, but we're working around that. We're looking at a standard and then a premium offering, the standard being out of the box and effectively offering a really decent price point, next to sort of no outlay, which is good. We'll look at what we're building, where we are at the moment, what the app looks like. We'll go into the app screens, just go over some of the important ones. We'll pick up on the priority ones there. That will lead us into what we're testing, which is going to be our next phase, which will happen in May. We're running into that now. We'll look at the user feedback we've had so far, how that's going to focus our next round of testing. Training is something we want to pick up. We want to make sure that we don't forget about that as we document the app and as we work through the guidance and support that will be needed when we're packaging it up. Lessons learned is always a good reminder of what we've done, what we're trying to achieve. And then we'll look at what our next show and tell will be, which will be following that testing, and we'll look at that towards start of June. Good to have you on the call today. We've got a bit of a waving hand here to show who's on it. Thanks, Malcolm, for joining. Really good to see you. You've done some amazing work, and we'll pick up on that later with some of the functionality. Justin too, and Terry, been phenomenal in what you've done, getting us to this point. And Janet's been helping bring it all together, which is always useful. It's never easy remembering, to chase project tasks, and especially as we're very focused on that release date at the start of July. With COVID and other elements, we've had to sort of work around that, but still maintain our focus and pick up any sort of lost time that we may have had, or we have had in our case. What brought us to this point? It's a good question. We've got a bit of a flow there. I think the key for us is the original TaskSmart was called Responder. It was for our environmental services specifically. It was a way of taking manual processes where I remember being on site and seeing, paper or multiple papers clipped to a board, people picking them up in the morning and literally taking those papers, going out, doing the task, updating the paper, bring it back, putting it back on the board. So it's very paper based, and you didn't really have a view of what's going on, until that paper was looked at, until it was put into spreadsheets. It's very, very manual, and you didn't really have a good view of what tasks were being completed and when and how efficient they were. So we knew we wanted to take Responder, which had a really good impact. It got rid of all that manual, paper-based, really good view of what they're picking up. But as they adopted it, as of anything in life, they said it'd be good to have this, and it'd be good to improve how many tasks we're picking up, and SLAs and KPIs now coming in. So we knew we had to build a Responder too. Looking at how we built Responder, that aligned well, I think, with, I hope you all agree, with best practice and the white paper standards that we were trying to adopt. And we knew it'd be a ground up build. We'd take what we've learned from Responder, how well it sort of functions for us and our services, and we'd rebuild that app with those best practices, with those standards around coding and naming conventions, and we build a completely new app. We knew we'd need to do it. Resource was definitely an issue, how we were going to find it. I think local digital fund round 5 beta came at the perfect time for us. We were able to apply for that funding. We secured that 286,000. We were managed to recruit developers into the roles to help us with this, even if it was to cover the current work while we did the local digital fund work, not necessarily work directly on the project themselves. It's all about maintaining. And the real sort of outcome that we've got, first of all, was collaborating with Malden and tendering. It's something that we wanted to do. We wanted to collaborate with other authorities because we've all got the same pain points, trying to recruit developers, you know, without sort of, you know, possibly the ability to recruit at the same level when it comes to paying for them. So we've been able to sort of engage and really collaborate. And this was only possible, I think, with the LDF funding. And more importantly, it meant that we could start co-authoring. So this is something that's really good, and we'll go into the Centre of Excellence later. But I definitely think LDF was the point at which that made that possible. And again, having Malcolm and tendering on the call is really useful because it's been something that's worked really well with the co-authoring, and the investment that they've made in the app has been phenomenal, and I think that will be ongoing.
Just to pick up on, you know, we spoke about earlier about the original version of Responder and why we decided to bring about Responder 2, or TaskSmart as we're now calling it. I think we decided to really build on the first version because the first version was fit for purpose to begin with in a much smaller environment. But with the sheer amount of tasks that we were recording, it ended up being that we ended up going over our having to adjust our reporting structure every single month because we were constantly hitting the 5,000 SQL query limit. So we were kind of handicapped in a way by how many tasks we could report on. And I thought, you know, we thought that the next version, the TaskSmart version, as well as the actual additional features we can bring in, so the VIP access, improved filtering, offline capability, all those additional features, as well as the enhanced, you know, reporting structure, it meant that we need to build on what we had in the first version, and that's why we decided to go forward with Responder 2 as well, just to bring that point in as well.
Yeah, no, I remember that, you know, because it's like anything, isn't it? It's quite amazing how many tasks actually started to be picked up and how that escalated, you know, in a good way, you know, and we soon reached those 5,000 limits, didn't we? That SQL query limit, because of literally the sheer number. We've split out the tasks. We managed to find a way around that, didn't we? You know, looking at the SharePoint lists, and we split that, whether it was splitting a month, to split down the period into smaller periods, whether we separate it out into different zone teams. I mean, that was a key factor, wasn't it? That we wanted to build into what is Responder 2, TaskSmart, isn't it? And all of this we're able to do up front. And as you said, you know, a particular interest of mine was the on-offline capabilities when it came to Signal. And the other thing is, we'll go into it later, pinning on the app, because there was some lost time when it came to trying to locate the tasks. It's quite often they're in green spaces, they're not near UPRNs or addresses or close enough to them to pick them up. So we did lose time in that. So that's again something we put into this new app. So that's really useful.
I think as well we benefit from the Power Platform capabilities around the partnership, particularly as Vaughan mentioned earlier. Microsoft recently introduced co-authoring on Power Apps, which means we can have multiple developers working on multiple bits of the app at one time without any conflicts. And also we can build in a templated way using component libraries. So we don't need to develop each time we make a button. It's not making a button from scratch. We're dragging in a button from our component library. So it really supports us in terms of producing the app quickly and iterating quickly.
Exactly, because I think one of the questions we've been asked by other people and other third parties is, why did we choose Canvas Power Apps? Because there's you know, a whole raft of different development environments, frameworks, programming languages, but what was it about uniquely about the Power Platform and Canvas Power Apps that we decided that Responder 2 or TaskSmart would be the ideal solution. I think for me, and I think for us as a team, the key point to consider here is that we wanted to be, first and foremost, a mobile first design and responsive design. And that's something that the Canvas Power Apps and the Power Platform really is geared towards. It's got a heavy focus on the UI and the UX rather than more being data model driven, such as other frameworks or environments. And I think, as you mentioned, Justin, the modular components and how you can use those against a standard template, and that reusability and compatibility across the entire app is something that the Power Platform is really helpful with.
Definitely, and I love the fact where, you know, we're very agile. This takes agile to another level. We're able to get it in front of the users, you know, earlier. They're able to test it, they're able to feedback, and we're able to, you know, sort of change it, make changes, get them to test it. It's just so much easier, isn't it? You know, and part of the Centre of Excellence was about being able to set up, wasn't it, our 3 environments, our dev, our production, and live, which is really good. But it just gets it in front of the customer, that end customer, for testing so much quicker, doesn't it? And changes can be made so much quicker and put in front of them as well. That's really good points.
I think
That's
there's been a big advantage with all the authorities in the partnership having some experience in this, and now we're all bringing that together and refining our standards and quality to really bring that into the future, that we'll all work in the same way with the same tools, and we can all support each other long term as well.
And one thing I found about the Power Platform and data structures in particular is that when we use SharePoint lists, we can then use collections for the front loading data. So every time that you refresh data or retrieve information, it's doing it from a collection rather than the original data source, which drastically improves performance and capability, especially when you're out in the field.
That's good. Yeah, and positive stuff, Malcolm. I see other apps coming, and we're learning as we go. You know, even this project, we've learned so much, and we'll be able to apply that. And especially with those standard templates components, that's phenomenal out the box. I think we'll get even quicker. Every app we develop will get quicker and quicker. So great. Wow, I think we've definitely agreed Canvas is a way to go. We've picked up different tasks, and I know Justin's been working hard in that, because, you know, looking at what we were trying to get TaskSmart to pick up, wasn't it, was the key initially.
And this ties in again to the modular and configurable building that we've been trying to do. So what you see on the presentation here are some examples of how we in the partnership will implement our configuration of TaskSmart. You know, we'll be doing things like out in the field tasks. As you can see, there's some examples there. It will cover hundreds of different task types. This is all set in the data, so when other organisations adopt the app, they can configure that to whichever tasks they want, and also how the tasks are grouped, which could be location based or service group based or process based. Because it's all data, it's configurable to their needs. And we that ties in with how we're building the app generally. So everything about the app, where we can make it something where it's a user choice for the organisation taking it on, that's what we've done. We've made everything configurable data as far as we can within the platform, so that it can be picked up and adopted with minimal administration and minimal setup time.
Yes, definitely. I mean, you know, they refer to it as low code. You know, it's the closest we can get, isn't it, to basically being able to configure this out of the box without obviously what in the past has been quite a low level, you know, a detailed admin sort of requirement, especially with coding. So that definitely helps us with that. But yeah, I agree with you. I mean, most authorities used to have these sort of tasks. I think they'll be able to relate to it. You know, they'll be able to relate to what we're doing, but equally they could do it for any tasks. That's the beauty of a standard templated task management app, definitely. And IT sports could be interesting. That's taking it to even a different level, isn't it? That's a good mix.
The model we've done is it'll allow a single deployment for multiple service uses as well. We're not talking about do a deployment for that service, do a deployment for that. It will allow us one deployment in your organization where 10 services could use it and have effectively their own view of their own tasks in that one deployment, which helps a lot with the administration and maintenance long term as well.
100%. Yeah, definitely. It's that, just like a single set of data, just like, that single app is going to be key, isn't it, when it comes to managing it, the permissions, the different levels, the views. So 100% with you, 100% with you. And that helps us with the different users we're trying to support, doesn't it? That's a good lead in, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So we, as with most development these days, we took a user story approach to determining our user needs. You saw in the previous slide that our focus in Colchester is around field service tasks, at least for our first implementation of the app. We may use it elsewhere in the authority, and more than tendering, our partners will be implementing it for different service areas and different processes. But so their configuration and their build will also be informed by user stories. So here are some examples that are partly Colchester specific, but also partly general, and will apply across the partnership. So reporting and analytics, managers needing to have a grip on their staff's workloads, for example, being able to look at where performance is good or where extra resources might need to be allocated to meet increased demand. Though we want to offer that in the app so that there's a one-stop shop experience for them to be able to see what their team are up to and resource it effectively. Where each of the examples here are almost different users or organisations that would interact with the app in a way, and they each have driven some development decisions down through the build, as the title implies. So things like our field service operatives being out in cold weather, wearing gloves, for example, and as Terry said earlier, a mobile first responsive app. We want to make sure things like the controls are able to be touched by somebody with, isn't at a desktop with a mouse with pixel point precision. They can get through the app and make use of it, even when it's difficult to use the phone. And also with the offline capability we mentioned earlier as well, even if they're out in remote areas doing some work where they don't have a signal. So we've talked through with our services and our users about what they would need from the app, and that's determined what work we've put in and the design decisions we've made over time.
And I think, and there's some good points there, because the term I use, we've kept it clean, so they only see what they need to see. Most of them, when we looked at feedback, they're saying, look, I just need to see what I need to see to do my role. We've kept it clean. There's no point cluttering the screen, so we've kept it simple for a reason. Some people say it's basic. It's not basic, it's simple, it's clean. They only need to see what they need to see, and I think that's a key point, isn't it? We've listened to what they've said. And it's the same with reporting analytics, because every one of them talked about KPIs, didn't they, and SLAs, and being able to see real time. And that's the key, isn't it? What's happening now? They want to look at the historical stats, of course, so they can look at trends. They can get ahead of things, especially councillors and other third-party organisations, because they want to know what's happening in their wards. Can they pick up on it? Is there a trend that we could sort of head off? So it's not just about completing tasks, it allows them to see what's coming up and try and removing tasks like graffiti, fly tipping, getting ahead of it. That's really good sort of points there. And I think, going back to what we talked about earlier, and especially Terry picked up on it, the UI user experience is key. They're driving this. We're delivering their version 1 of this application, what we call MVP, our minimal viable product. So it meets their needs. They're the ones that are sort of giving us the feedback. We're building it with them in mind. And I think that's where all this has come from. So it's really helped us develop the app for them, isn't it? Brilliant. And this is one of the key areas we found out, wasn't it? And now done a lot of work.
It's been a big challenge, the location data. A lot of the core functionality, or the built-in powerful location map and mapping tools in the platform we're using, are locked behind the premium features, which add on to the costs, which go against the low cost scope of the project. But records being driven by geographical data is a very powerful thing. It supports the end users with pinned maps, taking them straight to the locations. It drives business insights through the analytics based on locations. So we needed to solve that problem. We're pretty much there. We haven't quite settled on it, but we've got working proof of concepts. We've solved a lot of the problems with keeping in the free model. And we've been really pushing what the Power Platform can do without dipping into them premium features. I mean, the solutions we're going with are making use of Google and Bing Maps and the power they have, and drawing them into the app. And flexibility is a key principle of the project. So we've been experimenting with ways to turn any sort of location data coming into TaskSmart into a format the app can read and is happy with, whether it's lat and long coordinates or just partial address strings, and turning that into usable data, usable pins on maps that we're presenting to people.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you've done fantastic work. We're looking at sort of, and it's so difficult to keep within that licensing structure, isn't it? So easy to go into premium, and to do what you've done, and we're maximizing is the only way to put it. The functionality is maximized as what we can do with that licensing level. We're obviously going to offer, ability to step up, but to keep within that, we're offering that standard level of licensing, which I think is so important with local authorities. Most of them are going to be utilising the F3, the E3, the E5, those 3 licensing SKUs, and this sits nicely within that. So I think it's a really important bit of work. And let's face it, I hate to use a pun, but it underpinned a lot of the functionality we needed in the app, didn't it?
Yeah, we've really pushed the boundaries of what you can do in that feedback wall, and I think we've very close to having it about as optimized as we can, with as function rich as we can in them boundaries. So
that's great work, thank you. And this fits nicely with it, doesn't it, when it comes to the geolocation, so another bit of work.
Obviously, we all know that you don't always have your internet service when you're out and about in the field. There's dead spots everywhere, I think. And that's always been in our mind, and we've known that, and it's been a core thing from the start that we are going to support the offline functionality, and it's with very, very little loss of functionality in the app as well. You're losing almost nothing if you drop offline. The TaskSmart will gather your tasks locally into local collections on the app. Operatives can view them, update them, and add new tasks while they're still offline. And then when you get a connection again, that data is synced back up to your main data source that'll update into everyone. So.
And again, it sounds simple, but we've had to literally deliver a proof of concept. It's a working proof of concept, and again, that's overcoming another barrier. That's the only way to put it, to getting the most out of TaskSmart. You've got to have this functionality, in our opinion. This is essential, and it's something we wanted to build into the app. And again, it's that user experience, that user interface. So I think these are 2 really good bits of work you've done, what we've done as a development team.
Yeah, so again, going back to the user experience and talking about their experience of using the app and then the navigation possibilities, one thing we didn't want to do is make any assumptions about how a user would use the app from first logging in. So we realized that there are multiple types of users, and they expect different experiences when logging on. So, for example, as you can see in this mock-up, this is the mock-up homepage with basic navigation added on. What we've realized through initial UAT round 1 is that different user types would like different experiences when using the app for the first time. So a manager or a VIP user may prefer to have a list of all available options, such as in this view here we've mocked up. But then other users, so the operatives out in the field, those who are actually responding to tasks, allocate them, may not be interested in a basic homepage, but may want to be dumped straight into their task view, where they can immediately access all of their tasks, filter on those by custom views, edit mode, etc., etc. And I think that's really key in development, and actually listening to the various requirements of users. And again, it's about not making assumptions, because we as developers may envision a user wanting to access the app in a certain way, but until you speak to the end users and discover there are various types of users, it's important to make sure that those requirements are met.
Yeah, it's a good point, isn't it? And that's why, you know, we've worked within Canvas, because we get that direct feedback. As soon as you make that available to the user, they can start using it. They can start sort of, and it's interesting because, you know, we're all the same, I guess. You know, you think it's going to be used in a certain way, but everyone uses it differently, don't they? And where you'd think, you know, you'd want to land to a home screen and have all the options, I get it. You know, sometimes they just want to say, no, I just want to see what's applicable to me, and we can give them those different views. You know, in fact, we were talking the other day about accessibility, how we built that in, and we're looking at what's available when it comes to dark light mode. And so we're trying to build in what we can, again, to make it the best user experience we can for those end users. And again, it goes back to the cleanness. It's clean, it's functional, it's there to meet their needs. And I think that's the key, isn't it? We're not developing for us, it's for them. Thanks, Terry. That's really good. And
so again,
it's good to see the task views.
Yeah. So again, this is the view that you would get as an end user when you go into your task view, where you can then view by general location, etc. And you view the task details, view the customer details in these mockups. So I think it's key that the main functionality that end users have is to view, edit, raise, filter, and report on tasks from one screen, one environment. And what we wanted to do to achieve this is via a minimum of clicks. So the idea that a maximum of 2 clicks or 2 button presses away at any one point from the main screen, because we don't want to lead users down a rabbit hole or a maze of endless menus and navigations. It should be simple, clean, and accessible, which is what this task view attempts to be. And also, just a key point here on the actual data you can see. So the drop downs here are actually configured at the SharePoint collection level, and they are using dynamic tables, not on a screen basis, but actually surfaced across the app whenever that data set is required. Now, the key aspect of that means that these dynamic tables can be surfaced throughout the app and then cached, which is a key part in enabling the offline use. So that cached data is available to the users at any point when they don't have internet connection or poor connection.
And that's another sort of first for us, isn't it? We've really the only way you put it is engineered it. You know, we've been able to take what we wanted at Responder, what we knew we wanted in the new app, and the functionalities there, and with the help of Malcolm and yourselves, we've managed to get, you know, such a better app, even the design, everything that we could take forward. And you're right, servicing that rather than build it per page, per data set, we just surface them, and that could be across the app. So
by caching a lot of them selections and data, and even bringing the local tasks into local caching, you're massively reducing calls outside, which has a big effect on performance as well. So we're getting big performance gains by taking this approach. And for just a comment on the design as well, we've been very conscious. Mobile first, screen space is very limited. We need to be very careful and conscious about what we're squeezing into a view. So we've taken an approach of trying to create logical views under tabs. So where we've got, say, the raised task, you've got your general information, and then you've got your location information under just little tabs you flick between. Very easy for the user, doesn't overload a page, gives them everything they need. So
thanks, Malcolm. Yeah, no, really good points. And the testing, you know, has been really useful, hasn't it? And Justin, we've seen real gains, haven't we, out of that?
Yeah, it has. It's been interesting and valuable. I think we've touched on quite a few of the points as we've gone through the presentation, but really this was the first time that any of our users could see and play with the app in our first testing round. You know, as with all development, some of the early work that we did wasn't very visible in the app because it's the collections that we talked about and the component libraries and those things that make the app work but don't show in the app. So it was really good to get where we'd got to with the app in front of people and get their comments back as early as we did. Certainly earlier than I've been able to if you do sort of pure coding kind of approach. So because you need a anyway, we won't go into that. So it's been really useful. They made some comments about different things. We had some feedback from ourselves. We do our internal testing before we pass it out to service users. So that first one there is about SharePoint and the setup, and we got some valuable learning there about our experience doing that between authorities and how that would impact on other organisations adopting the app and what we could do to ease that for them. We have looked at how logging into the app, that, you know, there was an issue around user profiles and being able to determine who a user was. You could get into the app without a user profile, but it wouldn't be very useful if you didn't belong to a team. You couldn't get the right tasks. You might not get the right theme that you need to support your specific user needs. So we got some good feedback on that. We talked earlier about the landing screen, where they end up when they open the app, what's useful to different user types. And we did some general kind of comment questions, which had good feedback on the user experience and user interface, which is exactly what we want. That's the approach to the build. And so we had some thinking to do around comments from users there. And we've been able to update and tweak our work packages that are planned for the rest of the remaining sprints so that we can cover off what our users have fed back so far.
And you're right. I mean, the SharePoint list, you know, the very first one, it, you know, we always say, don't we, we learn more, not from what goes right, but sometimes what doesn't work as well as expected. And, you know, both Mould and Tendering tested it, and that's quite manual to set them up. So we're working on how we can make that more automated. And that's really good learning, because, you know, we're not here to say, you know, let's build a perfect app from the start, because it doesn't exist. You build an app, you test it, you keep sort of, you know, developing it, and that's the key, isn't it? So we're learning all the way, and if something doesn't work as expected, great, we're picking it up and we're improving it, and that's the key. So it's a really good system. I love it, as in the process, not just the app. That's really good. And we're running into our second round of testing, which is a good point, isn't it?
Yeah, we'll be moving on to the next round of testing. There's lots there that we'll be looking at. There are probably more as well. And what's exciting about the next round of testing is it will feel much more like the final app. It won't be finished. We'll have work to do still, but it will feel to the user much more like the final app. We'll get some more feedback on the user experience, because some of the forms and screens that you've seen and some other ones that you haven't seen will be more fleshed out, have more content in them. We'll be able to test against a more realistic and close to the real life kind of sets of data as we start to learn from our first experience with the SharePoint list setup. We'll get a set of template data that we can use that will give them a much more like their job kind of test. So I'm really looking forward to that one. Then we'll be able to say, you know, you're in this team, can you pick up a task from another team? Is that easy? Do we need to add a button here that helps you do it quickly? All those kind of little user-focused tweaks that we want to reduce clickiness, but also support the user to do their most common tasks with the least friction, so they can get on with their actual job doing the task, as well as not doing so much time updating it. We don't want to go anywhere near what Vaughan was talking about earlier, with the kind of get the bit of paper, take it out, write on it, bring it back, pin it up, someone types it up, goes on a spreadsheet. That'll all be gone. We also want to be assessing how well it meets our needs across the partnership. So does it hit everybody's needs? Are we going to be able to do our deployments as planned? How does that feel to users in different organisations with very different implementations of TaskSmart?
It was
We,
interesting earlier, you know, and I remember a point you made earlier, and it's so right. You know, this is, I hate to use the term exciting, but it's the interesting part, isn't it? Where you know now we're getting into user testing, and this is going to be even better because there's more of the app to test. The earlier stage in the process, there's a lot of building, there's a lot of work going in. In fact, a tremendous amount of work. But you know, only you guys saw it, you know, only the team saw that, you know, but now the users, the end users starting to see it, and it's getting more exciting for them, equally more exciting for me and the rest of the team. But it's just the fact that you don't see a lot of work. It's a bit like building a house, isn't it? Where it's all the foundations and everything. And then all of a sudden it goes up overnight when you walk past it in the morning. And this is the really interesting part. Isn't it? Now especially this second, we're getting closer to that final version, aren't we?
Yeah, our first testing was very much like almost like around the design direction we're going, and that's good and it's needed, but you really want to get to the meat and the functions. And now this is the function loops going on, and the users getting to do what they want to do with the app, and us seeing how they break it.
Definitely. Couldn't have put it better myself. What Malcolm said. Exactly what I am. And I guess, you know, we mentioned it earlier, and around it, you know, and that's why I thought about this point is we needed enough of the app sort of in place, built to test, but equally we can start to document it now. We can start to look at support and guidance, because what you don't want to do is start sort of developing support and guidance, then it changes dramatically, because then you've invested all that time and those screens are going to look different, or that route, that user sort of kind of gateway is going to change. So we're now starting to pick up the documentation and training support around the app. You know, as we get closer to that version 1, that app that's going to be released, what we've looked at is documentation's key, not just for us and our users, but for any authority or any organization that's going to adopt this app, you know, from an admin level. So how do I download it? You know, how do I access that package? What do I do when I've downloaded it? How do I set it up? It's got to be from the very start. We've got to be able to document that for them. And then equally, it will be the user experience. And what we've found within our partners is blended learnings work really well. We've got a great adoption and training officer, and videos work really well. People want to see it. You know, the old days of a guide, whether it is online or otherwise, with a lot of, you know, detail in it, doesn't really work. People want to see it. They want to. I even look at YouTube. We all do, don't we? And we look at a solution and we actually watch someone do it, and it's so much easier. So we're going to start building a proper blended training package, not just for users, but how you access, download, configure that app. It will be that full life cycle. And I think that's going to be another key part of this app, where we're not losing sight of what's required at the back end of it. We're going to bring that along from now.
I think that's the key word you used there, Vaughan, blended. And I think the other key word to use is user friendly, because every person who's going to use the app, everybody has different learning types. Some people are more visual, some people are based better on video or a written guide or audio. So I think having that blended learning, you know, documentation available, it means that we're not leaving anyone out, and that everyone has, you know, the ability to go through the documentation in whatever format and make best use of the app. Is about that user experience first and foremost.
Perfect. Yeah, I agree. User friendly is the key, isn't it? We're just like the app. We're trying to say, well, look, let's get this right. Let's make sure that every part of the focus is on the end user. I think that's really key. And it's the same with the app. You know, we're going to look at it. Obviously, it doesn't stand still. We'll have a version 1. We'll look at what the version 2 is going to look like. But version 1 is what we want to release. That's going to be part of that first iteration, and we'll make sure the documentation support is just as user friendly as the app. So definitely key. I mean, this has been good. It's been, you know, the first video we've done. We've got others planned. We're going to do a bit of a walk through the app, and we talked about how exciting it is to actually have something that's in test that people could actually look at, interact with, and we'll do a bit of a walkthrough video of that. Alongside that, we'll do another one of these show and tells. You know, it's been good to catch up. This is the perfect point for us when we had something that we could really talk about, something that's out there. The walkthrough of the app will help people to see that. We talked about the user experience and how video can help with that. So we'll start shooting that over the next few weeks. And then the next sort of presentation like this is going to be following that next stage of UAT. Let's get the UAT in, let's get that feedback, let's look at how we're going to develop the app. We'll have an update on what we've done further with pinning location. You know, we'll be able to sort of get closer to that end iteration of the app, that end version. So I think that would be good to do another one of these then, you know, so that'd be good to catch up. We might have other members of the team development wise that jump on, and let's do that. I think that makes sense. It's been good to catch up today. We'll put this on YouTube so others can see it. They can start to look at what we're starting to do in Colchester, and if they've got any questions, they can start to contact us. We've got our LinkedIn, our CBC 365 Solutions. We've also got a WordPress page. We'll get that out through Local Digital Fund. So just want to say a big thank you really for today, and thanks for joining the call. Good to sort of talk through it, good to go through it. I think we've covered everything. It's always, you always have something else when you come off a call that you think, oh, I should have mentioned that. But I don't think there's anything, is it, that we've not covered from my perspective? Are we all okay? We've covered it all, haven't we?
Yeah, I think so.
Brilliant. Thanks so much. And have a great day, everyone.
Thank you. See you. Bye.
Thank you.